Ayrton Senna, Imola, 1994. It was on May 1st, the San Marino Grand Prix, when the world tuned in to watch Ayrton Senna, the three-time world champion, the pride of Brazil, and the face of Formula One. What they saw instead was the most devastating moment in the sport's history. Senna had already suffered 2 retirements that season and was desperate to prove Williams could still dominate. But Imola was already cursed that weekend. Rubens Barrichello's violent practice crash, then Roland Ratzenberger's death in qualifying. By Sunday, nerves were raw. On lap 7, at nearly 190 miles per hour, Senna's Williams FW16 failed to turn at the infamous Tamburello curve. The car left the track, slammed into a concrete wall, and came to a stop in silence. Marshals rushed in. Viewers around the world sat frozen. Medical staff fought for minutes, then hours, but the head injuries were too severe. Ayrton Senna was gone at just 34 years old. The aftermath was like nothing F1 had ever seen. Millions filled the streets of São Paulo for his funeral, and the Brazilian government declared 3 days of mourning. His coffin was carried through crowds like that of a national hero, because that's what he was. Roland Ratzenberger, Imola, 1994. Before Ayrton Senna's fatal crash shook the world, Imola had already claimed a life. On April 30th, Roland, a 33-year-old Austrian rookie, lined up for qualifying in only his 3rd Formula One race. For Ratzenberger, this was a dream years in the making. He'd fought through touring cars, Formula Ford, and even Japan's racing circuits just to earn a shot in F1 with the underfunded Simtek team. But just 5 laps into qualifying, everything went wrong. The day before, he'd run wide and damaged his front wing. He decided to continue pushing, and on the high-speed Villeneuve corner, that weakened part failed. His car lost control and slammed head-on into the wall. The impact was brutal. Track doctors reached him within seconds, but the injuries were catastrophic. Roland Ratzenberger was pronounced dead shortly after. For Formula One, the timing was chilling. A driver had just been killed on Saturday. Then Senna died the very next day. Ratzenberger's story was quickly overshadowed, his name pushed behind the legend who followed. But inside the paddock, his loss was felt deeply. Senna himself carried an Austrian flag in his cockpit on race day, intending to raise it in Roland's honour if he won. That gesture never came. Ratzenberger's death played a vital role in what happened next. His accident forced the FIA to realise that safety had slipped behind the sport's speed and technology. His legacy is often quiet, but critical. His crash was the first domino that forced Formula One to reinvent its safety standards. Tom Price, Kyalami, 1977. The South African Grand Prix at Kyalami was unfolding like any other race when Formula One suddenly witnessed one of its most horrific accidents live on television. It was March 5th, and Welsh driver Tom Price, only 27 years old and already seen as one of Britain's brightest prospects, was running mid-pack when disaster struck. On lap 22, another car burst into flames near the pits. 2 marshals sprinted across the live track carrying fire extinguishers. One made it through. The other, 19-year-old Frederik Janssen van Vuren, never did. Coming down the straight at nearly 170 miles per hour, Price's shadow car had no time to react. He struck the marshal head-on. The impact was fatal instantly for both of them. The fire extinguisher Van Vuren carried smashed into Price's helmet with devastating force. His car, now driverless, continued down the track before crashing into the barriers. The crowd sat in stunned silence. Broadcasters didn't know what to say. Formula One had just suffered one of its most gruesome tragedies in full public view. The fallout was immediate. Questions about why marshals were allowed to run across a live track tore through the paddock. Safety standards for race officials, already a weak point in the sport, were exposed for the world to see. For Price, the loss cut deep. He had already proven himself with a sensational win at the 1975 Race of Champions and was being tipped as a future world champion. Instead, his career and his life ended in an instant through circumstances completely out of his control. Jules Bianchi, Suzuka 2014. On October 5th, the Japanese Grand Prix was already a battle against nature. Typhoon Fanfone had drenched Suzuka, and visibility was brutal. On lap 43, Adrian Sutil slid off the track at Dunlop Curve, his Sauber stranded in the gravel. Marshals brought out a recovery tractor to haul it away, and that's when Formula One's darkest modern chapter began. Seconds later, Jules Bianchi's Marussia lost grip in the same spot. At over 120 miles per hour, his car aquaplaned off the circuit and smashed directly into the side of the recovery vehicle. The impact was catastrophic. The crane lifted into the air, the car crumpled, and Bianchi was left with severe head injuries. The scene was haunting. No explosion, no fireball, just eerie silence as marshals and medics surrounded the wreck. The race continued under the safety car, but the paddock knew something was terribly wrong. Bianchi was rushed to hospital in critical condition. He never regained consciousness, and after 9 months in a coma, he passed away in July 2015 at only 25 years old. Bianchi had been Ferrari's rising star, tipped as a future world champion. His loss shattered the illusion that modern Formula One was too safe for tragedy. In the aftermath, the FIA introduced the virtual safety car system to control speeds in dangerous sections and pushed forward with the Halo cockpit device that now defines the look of F1 cars. Today, every driver who climbs into an F1 car does so under protections born from that night at Suzuka. Wolfgang von Trips, Monza, 1961. The Italian Grand Prix at Monza drew massive crowds, with more than 100,000 fans packed around the old high-speed circuit, eager to see Ferrari lock up the championship. It was September 10th, and Wolfgang von Trips, a 33-year-old German driver leading the points, was on the verge of becoming his country's first Formula One world champion. What followed instead became one of the sport's darkest days. On lap 2, von Trips's Ferrari tangled wheels with Jim Clark's Lotus as they battled for position on the approach to Parabolica. The contact launched von Trips's car airborne. It flipped violently and smashed into the barriers, disintegrating as it flew into a packed spectator area. Von Trips was killed instantly, and 15 fans in the stands lost their lives. The race continued, but the tragedy overshadowed everything. Phil Hill, von Trips's Ferrari teammate, went on to win and clinch the championship. His celebration was muted. The podium ceremony carried the weight of devastation, with fans and officials still in shock. The accident exposed just how unsafe Formula One circuits were in the early 1960s. Grandstands were dangerously close to the track, fencing was minimal, and cars were capable of speeds far beyond what the venues were built to handle. The Monza crash forced racing authorities to take crowd safety more seriously, though real change came slowly. For von Trips, the cruelty was hard to ignore. He had been a step away from history, leading the title race, adored in Italy, and seen as Ferrari's new hero. Instead, his name is tied forever to the day when Formula One's thrill turned into tragedy. Ronnie Peterson, Monza, 1978. The Italian Grand Prix at Monza turned chaotic from the very start. The grid was packed too tight, and as the cars rushed toward the first corner on September 10, 1978, disaster unfolded. Within seconds, wheels touched, cars collided, and a massive pile-up spread across the track. Ronnie Peterson, driving a Lotus, was one of the unlucky ones caught in the wreck. His car was pushed into the barriers and immediately burst into flames. The scene was terrifying. Thick smoke, shattered cars, and drivers scrambling to pull Peterson from the burning wreckage. Fellow competitors rushed to help, managing to drag him out before the flames consumed the car. His legs were shattered, but he was alive, and many believed the worst had been avoided. At the hospital, Peterson underwent surgery for his multiple fractures, but as hours passed, complications set in. Fat embolisms from the fractures caused organ failure, and by the next morning, Formula One had lost one of its brightest stars at just 34 years old. Peterson's death hit the sport hard. He was immensely popular, nicknamed the Super Swede, known for his raw speed and fearless style. Fans adored him, teammates respected him, and rivals feared him. The tragedy also sparked fierce debate over the medical response. Critics argued that delays and poor coordination in those first critical minutes cost him his life. The 1978 season carried on, but it carried a shadow. Peterson's teammate Mario Andretti clinched the championship that year, yet even he admitted the joy was hollow. Jochen Rindt, Monza, 1970. On September 5th, Monza's high-speed straights were famous for testing both man and machine, and Jochen Rindt was the fastest man in Formula One that season. Driving for Lotus, he had already won 5 races and was on course to secure his first world championship. Then qualifying day delivered one of the most haunting twists in F1 history. Rindt's Lotus 72 had been a groundbreaking design, but it came with reliability issues. During a run in practice, a brake shaft failure sent his car skidding out of control as he approached the parabolica. At nearly 150 miles per hour, his car veered sharply, struck the guardrail, and disintegrated. The seatbelts, improperly secured by design standards of the time, slid upward and caused fatal injuries. Jochen Rindt was killed instantly at just 28 years old. The paddock was shaken. Lotus founder Colin Chapman was devastated, and rival drivers openly questioned whether safety was being sacrificed for speed. Still, the season pressed on, and by the end of 1970, no one had been able to catch Rindt's points tally. Despite not being alive to see it, he became Formula One's first and still only posthumous world champion. The irony was chilling. A man chasing the glory of a title became immortalised by tragedy. Rindt's widow, Nina, accepted the championship trophy on his behalf, a moment that left the sport in silence. François Sévère, Watkins Glen, 1973. It was on October 6th when Watkins Glen was supposed to be a farewell celebration for Jackie Stewart, the Scottish legend preparing for his 100th and final Grand Prix. But the weekend turned tragic before the race even began. In Saturday's practice, his protégé and Tyrrell teammate François Sévère lost control through the high-speed S's section. Sévère's car clipped the curbs, slid sideways, and smashed into the steel barriers at nearly 150 miles per hour. The impact was catastrophic, tearing the car apart and killing Sévère instantly. He was just 29 years old. For Stewart, the loss was personal. Sévère was the man being groomed to carry Tyrrell forward, widely seen as a future world champion with speed, charm, and immense talent. Instead, his career ended in an instant, and Stewart's farewell turned into silence. Shaken by the crash, Stewart withdrew immediately, never taking part in what would have been his 100th race. His retirement came a day early, marked not by champagne, but by mourning. And that's it. So, which of these tragedies do you think changed Formula One the most forever? Comment down below, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos like this one.